Hello, my name is Gaun. I'm the head of product management here at solo.io. Thanks for joining us here at SoloCon. In this session, I want to talk about Gloo Edge, what we delivered in the 1.10, what you could expect in the 1.11, and give you a taste of what you could see in the 1.12 and even the 1.13, some of the topics that we're thinking about. First, I want to talk about product management here at solo.io. We have over 4.7 thousand users in Slack. This is a very large community here to help you, Gloo Edge users, Gloo Mesh users, Istio users. I'm in there, the product management team is in there, the field engineers, our engineers. If you have questions, please ask, please reach out directly. I love hearing feedback. I love hearing how you're using the product, what your pain points are, what you enjoy about the product. And again, I can't say how much we rely on you, our community users, you, our customers, to have this direct interaction through Slack. Also, we've done over 100 releases, actually hundreds of releases over the past year. I know it seems unbelievable, but if you count all the patch releases, GA releases, and beta releases, it's a dizzying array. I can't even tell you what the current release of Gloo Edge is or Gloo Mesh. I have to go look up what the latest patch version is. They do a release every hour, it seems like. And next, I want to tell you how many features we delivered. It's over 1,000 different features and improvements that we made in Gloo Edge and Gloo Mesh and Gloo Portal. That's just tremendous effort and a great job by the engineering team, by the product team here at Solo. It's just incredible. I can't imagine how we've done this. It's just beyond anything I could have expected when I came on here about 14 months ago. And then I also want to talk about how we actually look at these features. So the thing that we care about most, or the one that we put the most weight on, is you, our user. What do you care about? What the priority is in your mind of your ask? We want to hear from you in GitHub or Slack or from the field engineers. We triage hundreds of new issues every month. Again, we want to know that your priority, we want to know how long it's going to take engineering, and we want to get that to you as fast as we can within the timelines that you need to be successful in your projects. Product management here is not all about delivering features. We want to work with you, our users. We often have meetings with you every week or every other week or every month, sometimes quarterly, to understand your projects and where you're going. What requirements do you have? What requests for engineering do you need in the product in order to be successful, in order to meet your goals? Whether it is replacing your old legacy API gateway like AWS API Gateway or a number of our other competitors, or it is a new project and new capabilities that are needed, this is something that we keep very close track of. And again, we need this feedback from you. It is indispensable in order to keep this machine going. Let's dive into Gloo Edge. We have what I've seen as two different users. It's really a bimodal distribution. We have the classical enterprises that will test our product for 6 months before they move and upgrade or move into production. They test every little feature, they test scaling, they test latency, they test upgrade paths, and they're very, very careful. Then we have sort of the born in the cloud, born in Kubernetes users that are used to the high availability of Kubernetes, that are more on the GitOps process of constantly pushing new production paths. And so those users often are, very quick to make upgrades. And that's great. But the flip side of that is that sometimes, no matter how you build the car, you could actually still drive it into the lake. And what we've been focusing on for the past couple releases in Gloo Edge is just putting a bunch of safety features and bumper lanes. You could think of it, if you're going back to the car analogy, you have to put your foot on the brake in order to actually get it from park into drive. We want a lot more of that within Gloo Edge. Again, it won't prevent you absolutely from driving in the lake, but it'll give you a lot of hints or warnings, or prevent you from changing configurations in production. And this is the things that we need to deliver for these newer users, these ones that are born in Kubernetes, born in the cloud. In our last release of Gloo Edge 1.10, which came out in January, we had a tremendous amount of new features. Again, 80%, 70% of what we work on is stuff that you, our customers and users, have asked for. We're triaging hundreds of new features every month. We take those, we put them into our system. Sometimes we're getting you new features every week. If you're having pain points, don't keep them to yourself. I know you're dealing with some legacy vendors and whatnot that you're just screaming into the ether and nothing's happening. If you tell us, if you put in GitHub issues, we'll look at it. I guarantee we'll look at it and triage it and add importance to it and prioritize it, or tell you, hey, this is going to take a couple quarters or a little bit to get to. So that's primarily, again, what we're working on quarter after quarter on all of our products. One major feature that we've delivered is an increased ability to move and support AWS Lambda. This is something that we had in prior releases of Gloo Edge, but there were some improvements around refreshing tokens and user ID and cross AWS account support, and a number of bug fixes that we got feedback from you, our users, on. And it's important to not just look at the trees and also think of the forest here. What you, our customers and users, are trying to do here is move from AWS API Gateway. You don't see it as featureful, as it's not doing everything that you need in an API gateway. Sometimes you have 50 teams using it today, and you want to move wholesale from that to Gloo Edge. To do that, you need support for Kubernetes services, which we obviously do and are a first-class citizen. The second thing that you need is support for VMs or EC2 instances, and we do that as well, or external services. And lastly, what we've heard is that sometimes 60 to 80% of your services are on Lambda. And so building out this Lambda feature has been incredibly important for you to easily make that transition from ALB and AWS API Gateway to Gloo Edge. Some of the other improvements that we made in Gloo Edge 1.10 is to observability, monitoring, and alerts. There's a lot more that we could do here, but one of the requests that we've gotten over the course of many different releases is when you first install Gloo Edge, the first thing that you do is do glue cuddle check to make sure that all the components are there, that they're all working as planned. What we've heard from you, our user, is that you want to be able to have that as a metric and as an alert. So if something does go down, you will be able to know about it right away. And so I'm glad that we finally got to be able to deliver that in Gloo Edge 1.10. And one of the last major initiatives, and this is going to carry over to the 1.11, is scale testing, building a scaling framework, and making scale improvements. Now here, I'm not talking about the data plane scale. We have users doing 150, 500 million requests per day on the data plane. I'm talking in particular about the control plane, things like the number of virtual services. We have users that are going to thousands of virtual services, and we want to be able to improve that within a reasonable CPU and memory allottage. And so here, what we've been doing is actually building a test framework for scale. You can think of it as benchmarking, that we could test every new release, every GA release, to make sure that there's no regressions, and that we could have a baseline benchmark of this is how far you could scale Gloo Edge, whatever it is. Say 3,000 virtual services, 5,000 virtual services. We just want to give that information to you, our users. We built that testing framework. We made some low-hanging fruit improvements on the scale of the control plane, But then there's some larger improvements that we need to do, like combining pods that you'll see in the 111. This brings us to Gloo Edge 111. Again, most of the stuff that we're working on are customer requests, 70 to 80%. That has not changed. That will never change. Other things that we're going to work on, and I'll just skip right to the bottom because I've been surprised. We've been working on this response caching. This is something that you may have heard about in the roadmap. This is something that's a common feature in API gateways. We've had a few requests for it in the past. It seems like now that we're working on it, we have 5, 10, 20 customers asking for it. So that is going to be in the 111. I think that's a tremendous feature that we're going to deliver. One of the other improvements that we're going to make in the 111, and you heard about this when I was talking about the 110, we're going to continue that scaling work. We're going to combine a few pods to really help improve the CPU utilization of the control plane. We're going to test it again. We're going to get you some benchmark information. This is something that has been a regular ask from you, our users. Next is XDS Relay. This is a feature that we delivered in 1.9. Now let me go back and explain what XDS Relay is. XDS Relay enables you to have high availability in XDS, basically the source of truth of Gloo Edge. You could think of it as, you have the classical high availability where we could have, 3 instances of Gloo Edge control plane. Now, what we found is that some of the outages that we saw at customers that were not because of, Gloo Edge failing or a bug in Gloo Edge, but because of pushing, false or wrong configurations to the control plane, would not have been solved by that classical high availability with those 3 instances of the control plane. So what we did here and when we did the investigation and the postmortem is that we found that if we actually delivered 3 instances of XDS and did not accept bad configurations, that this would have prevented outages. So this is a very important feature. This is something that we delivered in the 1.9. We had some users test it. We have some feedback and things that we need to improve, including MTLS between these 3 instances of XDS and some other small things around metrics that are mostly UX improvements. So we'll be working on that as well. And so that's the bulk of the Gloo Edge 111 improvements that you'll see. There's some things around making sure that the Helm charts are consistent so that you could upgrade. I would also mention that in the 112, 113, the way that we're thinking about Gloo Edge is that we're getting a lot of users that, they're not moving to Istio right away, so they're not going to use Gloo Mesh Gateway. What they're doing is they're trying to replace Apogee, they're trying to replace Kong, they're trying to replace AWS API Gateway, or they are using Kubernetes and they need an API Gateway and they haven't used anything in the past. In those cases, we want to be able to do that extremely well and to be able to have all those different use cases fulfilled. So in the example of AWS Gateway, as I mentioned, we need to be able to really have first-class support for Lambda, VMs in EC2, as well as Kubernetes services. And so that's something that we'll continue to work on. The next thing that we're seeing is, and we've heard from our users, is that we need to improve upon the upgrade experience. We've delivered Canary upgrades in 1.9, but there's a few more things that we could do here. Again, with the consistency of the Helm charts, doing more stuff around Canary upgrades, doing more stuff around documenting blue-green upgrades. This is stuff that you'll see in the 112, 113. This is stuff that we're thinking about as we go forward as well. The next thing is messaging queues. This is in some API gateways where you'll take an HTTP response and translate it and put it into a messaging queue. We've gotten a bunch of requests around that quite recently, so I think you'll see that in the 112 and 113 roadmap as well. And the last thing here is combining the UI with Gloo Edge and Fed and Portal. And the reason I put this last is because the first part of this, the first thing that we're going to address is actually putting GraphQL in the Gloo Edge UI. And I'm not going to talk to you about everything that we're doing in GraphQL. This is a fully baked product. They're so featureful. You should go to Keith Babo's session, who's on the product management team. He's the expert there. He's going to go through all of GraphQL. If you're even more interested in GraphQL, you could even go to the workshop where you get hands-on experience with GraphQL and Gloo Edge. But I want to introduce that to you because it is a major feature in the 1.11 going forward. So first, what should you know about GraphQL? Well, if you're familiar with the adoption stages, you have early adopters, you have bleeding edge users, and the very early start of a technology. We're somewhere in the early majority phase with GraphQL. There's a lot of awareness about GraphQL. Everybody knows about it, but not all of you are using it. Some of you are in the very early stages of adoption. Some of you, a lot of others, are in the phase of, oh, I'm going to adopt it next quarter or next year. And so we wanted to build this into Gloo Edge because we see a lot of capability that we could deliver above your normal GraphQL experience that you currently have options for. So what exactly do I mean by you're getting all these new benefits by combining GraphQL with Envoy? Well, first, you get the simplified deployment architecture. You don't have to do a separate GraphQL server, an Envoy, or an API gateway. Those are now combined. You get improvements on the performance. Envoy is written in C++, which is very performative, very fast, versus Node.js. You get a declarative architecture like you do with all of Gloo Edge and Kubernetes. This is what you kind of expect when you're using Kubernetes. It should be declarative. And one other big improvement that you're going to see is all those API gateway features that you have in Gloo Edge, rate limiting, WAF, will be available directly in GraphQL. And then one other thing is that you could think of, you don't have to write all these new GraphQL services. You could actually use GraphQL with your REST services, with your gRPC series services. And I mean, this is an easy way to start to dip your toe in the water because you are in that early majority stage. You're in the beginning of the adoption or you want to adopt GraphQL. This is the best way to do that. So again, this is a fully baked product. Go see it, go to the workshop, go to Keith's session. You can see the UI here. It's just beautiful. I love it. Amazing. Amazing job, team. Amazing job, product. Amazing job to the engineers. Now I want to talk a little bit about Gloo Mesh Gateway. Again, this is an API gateway in Gloo Mesh. Why am I talking about it in the Gloo Edge session? I'm doing that because sometimes we get questions on, should I use Gloo Edge or should I use Gloo Mesh Gateway? Well, if you're not using Istio, then you should use Gloo Edge. If you are using Istio, the first choice would be Gloo Mesh Gateway. And so where are we in Gloo Mesh Gateway and what do we need to improve upon? Well, we built Gloo Mesh Gateway because a lot of users wanted to have a single control plane or management plane instead of managing two. Gloo Edge control plane and Gloo Mesh Gateway management plane. Gloo Mesh management plane. And so by adding the API gateway features directly into the Gloo Mesh management plane, you get one management plane to rule them all of the Istio instances, as well as all your north-south API traffic and east-west API calls and requests. Now, there's another reason, and that is we got a lot of users or people that are using Istio that think, oh, I could just use Istio. I don't need a separate API gateway. And it's true, there's some overlap between the features of Istio, like MTLS, and things that you would get with an API gateway. But to take those building blocks, those fundamental basic concepts that are in Istio, and build a full-featured API gateway is a giant mountain that you would need to climb. You would need the federation, you would need the rate limiting, you would need the authentication and authorization. We had that in Gloo Edge, and we wanted to take those features and put them directly into the Istio ingress. And that's what we did with Gloo Mesh Gateway. You get the rate limiting, the advanced rate limiting, XDAUth, and everything that you could expect from, again, a full-featured API gateway directly in the Gloo Mesh management plane. Now, there's still more to do. This is an example of the Gloo Edge architecture. You can see it on our website. You can see it in our documentation. So what are we missing today when you use Gloo Mesh Gateway? And what do we need to improve upon? First is the filters. We don't have every single filter that you have in Gloo Edge today. The data loss prevention, the web application firewall, the Lambda features. Those are things that we are building in the 2.1 and the 2.2. The next is services that are not on Kubernetes. External services, those Lambda services I mentioned, or services that are on Kubernetes but not part of the service mesh. We need to improve upon those capabilities within Gloo Mesh and Gloo Mesh Gateway as well. Again, thanks for joining me for this Gloo Edge roadmap session. It's great to have you at SoloCon. You've seen all the excellent work that the engineering team and product team have done here with the hundreds of releases and thousands of issues and features and improvements that we made in the products over the past year. All from you, our users, the feedback that we got. Let's just continue doing this. Let's keep this conversation going, and let's continue to build these products to meet your use cases and goals. Thank you.